I know it's been a while. I've been kind of quiet for a good week and a half, and I know you probably thought I wasn't going to be back to do these weekly Vedic forecasts, but boy, it's just been a crazy week after the lunar eclipse. And of course, every year when you have daylight savings time, for those of you who live in countries that actually have daylight savings time, it always ends up knocking you for a loop. And then we've had Saturn stationing retrograde, and boy, it's just been a crazy week. But I've come to a decision, and news for you is I'm going to retire. Just kidding, April Fools. I bet I had you going there for about one small second. Maybe not. But anyway, here I am, and I'm back again with your weekly Vedic forecast. This week being for the week of the 1st of April to the 7th of April 2016. And as I said, as I wasn't here last week, Saturn has stationed retrograde over the course of the last week. And we are heading up to a period about the middle of April where Mars will also be shifting to retrograde motion. The key word that's tying in with some of this energy between Saturn and Mars, and we'll touch on that here in a moment, but the key word for this week is innervation. And I don't mean innovation, right? What I mean is innervation. It's a word a lot of people don't know, but to be unnerved means that you get bothered or upset. Something gets on your nerves, or somebody gets on your nerves, and you can find people innervating. We can find situations innervating. But there's definitely that type of energy present this week. And sure, innervation can sometimes lead to innovation. But when it's in the moment, many times that sense of innervation, it's really just kind of best to ride it out and deal with it what you've got to deal with it. Or I should say, do with it what you've got to do with it, and while you're dealing with it and doing. So dealing and doing, and dealing with it and doing with it. Right? So maybe I was right in the first place. So key in this week's astrology is Mercury. Mercury is tying into so many different aspects this week. Why? Because, well, we've got planets, including Mercury, at the beginning of the week in Revati Nakshatra, and also the Sun in Revati Nakshatra, and that is ruled over by Mercury. Equally, we've got Saturn in Jyeshta Nakshatra, which is also ruled by Mercury, and Mars later on in the week is also going to be in Jyeshta Nakshatra. So when Mercury isn't coping well, or when it's ill-supported in the chart, like it is as we start the week off from the 1st onwards, and then later on in the week it gets a little bit better, but when it's in that position, it's not going to be able to handle its responsibilities well. So that means in terms of Revati Nakshatra, well, let's take a look at that before we even bring the planets into it, right? Let's talk about Revati. What is Revati about, at least on some levels, right? Well, it's a moksha nakshatra. Moksha nakshatras want liberation. They're striving for liberation from a particular set of circumstances, so to speak, right? But key to this, key to Revati, is it's the last of the nakshatras. So it means the end of one phase of existence, or the end of a lifetime, so to speak. We go through these many different lifetimes over the course of a lifetime. So the end of one phase of existence, and the next phase has not yet begun. And the period of time in between is such as it can feel like one is in a state of limbo. There's a lot of developments that are taking place during that time. But because of Revati Nakshatra is very sensitive nakshatra, being the last of the nakshatras. So the energy of it can be very sensitive. And when Mercury isn't very well supported, it can make it so that things get a little bit jittery or uneasy, or you feel on edge, or you feel sensitive about things, or all of the above, right? And that's likely going to be the case over the course of the week. Adding to that equation touching on one of the aspects of the week already, we have a ongoing aspect between, it's a conjunction between Saturn and Mars. And what's happening is Saturn is now retrograde, and it's closing in on Mars, which is now moving forward. Now, Mars itself is also slowing down, right? But let's talk about Saturn. Saturn is the planet of, stillness, obstruction, slowness. And Mars is that planet of passion and action. Things need to happen, and sometimes they need to happen right now. But Saturn says, no, things need to go slowly, take your time, or I'm not so sure about. Whereas Mars says, I'm ready to do it now, and I'm ready to take action now, and things are going to happen now, and things have to happen now because I can't wait any longer, and it has to take place now because taking place later just isn't going to work, and it all has to happen right now, right? So you get the idea? Those two planets, one that needs for things to go slowly, and the other one that needs for things, needs a little more action, right? It doesn't like for things to be moving slow. Those two planets are somewhat different in nature, wouldn't you say? Even though they're both tamasic planets. Tamasic planets create or deal with problems dependent upon the circumstances. So as they're closing in on a conjunction, that in itself is going to create a lot of edgy energy. And Mars at the beginning of the week is in Anuradha Nakshatra. And with a very well-supported Saturn in the equation, what that makes for is the propensity with a sense of detachment or a sense of space to be able to rightly assess a situation. Because Anuradha Nakshatra, one of the things that it brings is the right judgment, or the ability to uncover things and see things correctly. Anuradha, loosely translated, means another Radha. And Radha was the devotee of Krishna and had intense devotion for Krishna and felt longing pains for Krishna. But all the time that was going on, she eventually learned that, she was never separate from Krishna. It was just a perception, right? But it was kind of nice to have that perception, because then the devotion could be there from afar. So it's about having the right relationship with something, and sometimes even from a distance, right? So Mars gives that at the beginning of the week. But then as the week progresses and Mars edges into Jyeshta Nakshatra with a not very well supported Mercury, that's going to make it so that the right perspective is not there. And Saturn's in Jyeshta Nakshatra too. So Jyeshta Nakshatra, as Anuradha Nakshatra, gives the space with which to judge something. What Jyeshta Nakshatra does is, once that space is created, it gives the perspective so that one can see the situation as it is. With proper discipline, one can then restrain oneself when one needs to, control oneself rather than jumping into action, rather taking a little bit of slowness or a little bit of patience as one's approach, rather than diving right into the action, right? Until one is able to see clearly. And then from that space of clarity, that space of perspective, one can act in a much clearer manner. That's not there this week, right? Instead, the potential feels a little bit jittery. And many times there may be the desire to kind of prop oneself up with a sense of false pride or false ego in order to deal with the situation, because inside one is vacillating, right? You're ready for something to change, but it's not quite ready to change. And it felt ready to change before, and now it's even beginning to feel a little bit worse than it did before. And so then that's got you feeling a little bit jittery, right? But things that aren't clear are going to become clear a little bit later in the week. So equal to that, we also have the sun forming an aspect with Jupiter, the sun in Revati Nakshatra, right? It's having the light shone on all of its sensitivities while it's needing to maintain that level of confidence, right? Because that's what the sun does. The sun needs to be noble. It needs to deal with things, right? Well, Jupiter is in the sun's nakshatra. Jupiter is in the sun's nakshatra, very much trying to keep that perspective of confidence, that perspective of determination. But Jupiter equally is dealing with an aspect from Saturn, which has the brakes on. While things are uncertain, the brakes are on. One is still trying to maintain one's confidence and pretty much doing a good job of it, but still a little bit of uncertainty and a little bit of doubt that's making it so that one is going, well, action is not quite ready to be taken as of yet. Mercury and Mars equally forming an aspect. And as we said, Mercury starting off in Revati Nakshatra, and then later on it's going to shift into Ashwini Nakshatra. So the perspective begins to slowly dawn on one. The situation one's dealing with becomes a little bit clearer. But as it's becoming clearer, one is feeling compelled to act, and there's a lot of jittery, nervous energy that's making it so that one feels like something has to happen sooner than it is likely going to be able to. And in addition to that, there might be some other developments that are taking place more quickly than one really has the capacity to sit and really think about and judge, right? And while we're on that topic, let's also talk about the fact that for a large portion of the week, we've got a conjunction between Ketu and Venus. While lingering in the background is still that connection between Rahu and Jupiter, right? So one of the things to remember about Venus and Jupiter. So first of all, Jupiter is the minister or advisor as it comes to spiritual affairs, as it comes to, spiritual wisdom and expansion, things along those lines. Well, Venus is the advisor when it comes to material affairs and the enjoyment of one's life, right? So both of those planets are connecting to the nodes. On one level, you could probably paint the picture by saying on one level, it's hard to know what to believe, okay? And as it's hard to know what to believe, and one's values as per Venus are constantly changing and shifting as new information is dawning, because Venus is in Uttara Bhadrapada Nakshatra. So there's some new insights dawning on you. And as that is happening, you're wanting to take the time to really consider the outcome of your actions before you actually initiate those actions. And on many levels, that's actually very wise this week. So astrology always happens for a reason, right? As humans, we may get into these spaces where we feel completely annoyed. And that's the energy of the week is, I hate to say it, feeling completely annoyed about the way things are developing. So we may get into that space about being annoyed about it. But we have to remember that it's for a reason. It's leading in a certain direction. We may not be happy about where we sense that direction's going, but ultimately it is the best direction for us. Speaking of Jupiter and Venus, they are also forming an aspect to each other, right? And so later on in the week, even though some of the information that one may be recognizing or understanding in terms of things that are evolving, basically, as we're talking about Venus and values, when I was on that topic, Uttara Bhadrapada Nakshatra, one of the things that tends to happen to it is information or insight comes into one's life that shifts one's paradigm or shifts one's way of thinking. In terms of Venus, shifting one's values, seeing things from a wider perspective. And that wider perspective, it doesn't, perhaps when you're ready to take action on that perspective that you're seeing, it doesn't necessarily feel like something that you're thrilled about or something that's going to bring a lot of enjoyment to you. But it's something that is necessary in order to heal a situation and create the condition that can allow you to actually ultimately move on. So over the course of the week, I would say one of the other energy tones is ready for one situation to end. But the thing, and you're desiring to act and you're desiring to take action, but by the same token, it's not wise to do so until you feel and hear what it is that you need to do. And what's going on in here, and you can't see where I'm pointing to, but I'm pointing to my heart. And I'm not talking about heartburn or indigestion, which would be lower down. I'm talking about a change of heart. Until what is going on with that change of heart can become a little bit clearer, then it's important to take time, and it's important to be patient. Even though you may feel a little bit edgy and feel like, you know what, I'm just really ready for this to end, try to have a little bit of patience. Recognize that it's just energy. That energy is there to serve a purpose. That energy is there to create some further developments for you. So don't ignore it. Don't by any means repress it, but by the same token, try to understand there's a meaning behind it and a purpose behind it, which later in the week is going to become much clearer. Now, if you could use a little bit of help on navigating the energies this week or in future weeks, or you want to know a little bit about what this period in between eclipses is about for you, just a reminder, my astrological services page, which is linked below, you can click that and schedule something with me. That's going to do it for your look ahead through Vedic astrology for the week beginning the 1st of April to the 7th of April, 2016. Until next week, I do hope you take the very best care of yourself. Bye now.